Hi, it's Chris Watkin here, and I'm with estate agency royalty, Peter Knight. Peter, thanks for coming down to London to see me. And what I'd like to do is talk about the Property Academy's Best Estate Agent Guide, how it is measured, judged, the good things, the bad things, your home mover survey, and basically talk to you about what's happening in UK estate and letting agency and what we can do to help the boys and girls out there in estate agency land with what you've found out from what you've done. So, for those people that have been living in a cave, what is the best estate agent guide?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me, Chris.
No,
it's great to be here. So it's now our third year of doing the Best Estate Agent Guide, and I actually remember Ian Kennedy at Rightmove saying to me when we first launched the initiative, he said, "Penny, this will take you 3 years to get it right." And crikey, he was bang on. It has taken us 3 years to evolve it and to move it to where I'm now really happy about it, and I hope that your viewers and everybody else in the industry will be too. So what we've done is we've assessed every single listing that has appeared on Rightmove over a 6 to 8 month period. So it's about 1 million plus listings that are on Rightmove at any point in time. We then measure their performance on what we call on the same patch. So if you take Grantham, and there are a number of estate agencies in Grantham, we don't take Grantham as a patch. We take each estate agency branch and measure their patch by a methodology, which is wherever they've listed a property, whether it's to sell or to let, we do that separately, that's their patch. So if you had an office, let's say in Grantham, that covered a wider area, their listings would be compared against a wider patch. If you had a branch that was covering a smaller area, because it's part of a network of 3 or 4 in the same proximity, their patch is a narrower patch. And we measure the performance of those listings over a 6 to 8 month period, basically to ask, did they sell or let, yes or no? How well were they marketed? And we measure that by the number of property views, the number of click-throughs, the photographs, floor plans, and things like that. And then it's over 3 billion pieces of data in total.
Sounds like a big spreadsheet.
So it's a rather large spreadsheet. And it enables us to therefore determine which are the best performing branches. From that stage, we then aggregate the branch scores to create and find the top agencies.
How many measures have you got in there?
In total, there's almost 50 measurements. 32 of them are on the mystery shop, and then there's 18 measurements approximately on the data. And this exercise is done, Chris, completely free of charge. Okay, Rightmove account managers will be able to share all of the findings in terms of the data assessment for free with all of their members, and we will have the answers to the mystery shop, which we carry out as well. That's another part of it, and so that estate agents can find out how they've done, where they can improve, because we can all improve, let's be blunt here, and also, of course, have the opportunity to congratulate their team members where they've done an exceptional job. And there have been many examples of agents delivering an exceptional performance, and it's those that have ended up winning a Best Estate Agent Guide award.
So 17 or 18 Rightmove data points.
Yes.
Did everybody? Okay, so what did you judge them? What were those 17 measurements, those metrics?
Okay, so the principal ones I mentioned were things like, did it sell? Yes or no? Did it let? Yes or no? Did it come back onto the market? In other words, did it fall through? How long was it marketed for? And during that period of time, how many page views did it get on Rightmove? How many click-throughs did it get? We know from consumers and all our research, and all of our data assessment is based on the research that we've done into what consumers feel is important about selecting an estate agent. And they tell us that one of the most important, there's 2 main things, but the number 1 and 2 things are the quality of the marketing of their property,
Okay.
and
Which can be measured in the click-through rates and things like
absolutely, and also the numbers of photographs and floor plans and things like that as well, which also have a bearing on the click-through rate. And of course, that also has a bearing in terms of its positioning in the market at the correct point in terms of pricing. Because if it's underpriced or overpriced, it will have an impact in terms of numbers of views and so on. And then we have, for the mystery shop, as I mentioned, we have 32 different things that we measure.
that. So what did the mystery shop exactly look like?
So there's 4 things that we sought to identify based on our home moving trend survey.
You've been doing those home moving trends for quite a while
10
now.
years.
They're wonderful if you
Thank
don't
you.
mind me
Well,
saying.
that's very kind. And this year we're actually publishing a summary of the 10 years combined insights and the changes over the 10 years. And we've actually engaged with a professional research company to assist us in this analysis, because it's pretty, we assess 5,000 sellers, 5,000 landlords and 5,000 tenants each year. So we've got well over 100,000
Well, I've got
people.
I've got back copies that I look at, and it's amazing how we don't have to give too much away, but how it has not much has changed, but certain things have slightly evolved,
definitely,
haven't
absolutely.
they?
But
And
most
it's
definitely have.
really it's amazing.
It is, and I mean, you're right, there are certain principles that remain constant. We still measure them though, and then there are other things which vary, and I'm afraid one of the things, we may touch on it later, one of the things that's varied, perhaps the biggest change, has been fee levels that have been charged, but that's perhaps for a bit later. But what people tell us is marketing is really important, because that they feel leads to them getting the result that they want, which I think is a reasonable conclusion. And the second thing that they tell us that's important to them is whether they can trust the agent or not. And if you like, do they like them and trust them? Now, the issue we had was, if I asked somebody, how do you measure likability or trust? The chances are that they wouldn't be able to tell me.
It isn't a number, is it?
It's not. And we wanted to make this very much based on data rather than a subjective opinion. So what we drilled it down to, when we asked other questions of these people who are actively selling or letting their property, we drilled it down to 4 key things that make up together likability and trust. And that's professionalism and courtesy, listening and understanding, their knowledge and information, how smart they are, and their responsiveness. And those were the 4 ingredients that, through our surveys, we were able to identify added up towards likability and trustworthiness. And so, in our mystery shops, we set a series of questions that were yes, no answers. So I'll give you an example. Responsiveness, let's just take that one, it's really simple. Was the phone answered, yes or no? Okay. Was the email answered?
So how many phone calls and emails did every agent get then?
Well, there's 20,000 in total that we carried out. Each agent received 1 call per branch for sales, 1 call per branch for lettings, 1 web inquiry for sales, and 1 web inquiry for lettings.
And was that on the demand side or the supply side? Demand as in buyer or tenant, or was that a landlord or vendor?
Principally, it was done as a buyer and as a potential tenant.
Okay.
You'll know from previous conversations, Chris, my view that the customer is 4-dimensional, and I do not believe that customers should be treated differently, because they're coming to an agent as a tenant as opposed to as a landlord. They could be one and the same. They often are one. They often are. Buyers are often sellers, and vice versa. And what was staggering, once again, and I've got these stats, as I said, for you, hot off the press. We actually found that some quite shocking responses, I'm afraid. Sales calls, 14% went unanswered.
14%?
14% of calls. All these calls were made during business hours, Monday to Friday.
That's nearly 1 in 6.
I know. On the lettings side, it was the same. So actually, it's 15% went unanswered. In terms of web inquiries, 27% on sales, so over a quarter, were not answered within a day.
Well, that's better than last year.
It is a bit better, although on lettings, it is better than last year, because 52% went unanswered last year. On lettings, it's 35%. So 1 in 4 people inquiring as a... and here's the interesting thing. When it came to the calls, although our mystery shoppers posed as buyers, they also, if somebody had asked them, they also had a property potentially to sell. In other words, their scripts,
Yes.
it allowed for the conversation, but it was down to the agent to ask the question rather than for it to just be volunteered.
You're telling me that the buyers are ringing up, they potentially had a property to sell, you're going to announce the number at EA Masters on the number that weren't asked.
Yeah. So
I mean, you've told me in private, so that number
Yeah.
is amazing.
it is, and look, there's another number that I'm happy to share with you, Chris. So not only did the buyers pose as potential sellers as well, and therefore there was the opportunity for the agent to ask the question to say, have you got a property to sell? Would you like a property to sell? And as I said, we're going to share that at the EA Masters. But one stat I will share you with is they were inquiring about specific individual properties.
Yes.
Okay? And they were waiting to be asked to view the property. And had they done so, they would have actually made an appointment and then subsequently, would have cancelled it, and therefore the agent's time was wasted. What if I told you that 27% this is on sales calls, 27% of the people inquiring about a property were not even asked if they would like to view it?
Why? Let's be all frank here. There's a lot of people complaining about Rightmove at the moment and their costs, and I've gone on record to say I think they're good value for money.
Mm-hmm.
But if agents aren't actually answering phone calls, B, even asking for a free valuation, which the number amazed me, and that you'll be telling them at the EA Masters, and then not even ask for a basic viewing, no wonder they're not doing very well.
Well, let's put it into context. The best ones do all of those things exceptionally well, okay?
But this is
the
basic stuff,
Well, it
Peter.
is, and this is what I keep saying to people, when they ask me, what have you got to do to win an award? The answer is very simple. Do the ordinary things extraordinarily well, right? Just do the basics brilliantly well. And by the way, the basics are good for the customer. They're also good for the agent. The customer is wanting to be looked after. They want a service.
Why do you think agents? I mean, this is page one stuff of a estate agency.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think we as an industry are not very good at this? I'm not talking about the best. I'm just talking about the average vanilla in the middle.
So I think it's a combination of two or three things. So number one, I think that we employ people, quite frankly, who are not fit for purpose in this industry, in too many cases. And I think that sometimes the culture that we create for those people around their methods of remuneration and so on do not actually foster good service. They actually cultivate a climate sometimes of immediacy, and if somebody is not prepared to transact straight away, they're dismissed on the basis of being time wasters, tire kickers and all the above. So that's the first key area. The second area is a lack of proper systems and process. And those two things combined add up to massive variations in service. So there are certain brands with more than one branch, some with a substantial number, where the service from one branch is quite extraordinarily brilliant, right, and best in class in every respect. But you call another branch, and it's at the complete opposite end of the spectrum, and a third somewhere in the middle. Now, the very best firms, the very, very best, and I have to say, one of the things that's come out of our analysis, Chris, is a very simple snapshot is this: the bigger the firm gets, on average, the poorer its average performance.
Bigger the branch or bigger the network?
Sorry, the bigger the network. So if I added up all the scores of the single branch businesses and averaged them out, they would score better overall than what we call a small size band. That's 2 to 5. The 2 to 5s, the smalls, would perform better than the mediums. That's 6 to 20. And the mediums would perform better than the large, which is 21 plus. And this has been consistent across the years that we've been doing this assessment, that the very, very best businesses tend to be the single branch businesses or the small estate agents, the independent estate agents, if you like. Now, there are exceptions, and you do get some branches within a big corporate who have done exceptionally well and deliver a phenomenal service. But I'm afraid as a general rule of thumb, the bigger the business gets, the poorer its average performance.
Why do you think that is?
I think it's the difference between ownership and proper engagement. And ultimately, the people that own and run a business have a different level of commitment to those that are just employed in the business.
Do you think, apart from the diamonds in the coal of the big boys, do you think that those bigger firms could offer us as good a service as the one-man bands?
I do, because I think ultimately that's down to systems and processes, and in fact they have more resources. I mean, they should be able to manage these processes, but I fear that perhaps their drivers are not so much a service driver, it's a commercial driver.
Okay. Do you think we're too transactional as an industry and not as opposed to building relationships for the long term?
Well, I do, on the basis that if you look at what many estate agents, so-called traditional estate agents, market themselves as premium service, we provide a professional premium service. You hear this sort of statement a lot. Okay, fine, that sounds right. What does it actually constitute? And to my mind, things like answering the phone during working hours and responding to an email inquiry within 24 hours, I don't think that's hardly premium. It is, you say, it's page one estate agency. And in far too many cases, it's just not being delivered on. However, let me just set the balance right. Those that do, right, and there are many examples, we've identified the top 3%, broadly speaking, about 500 approximately agencies in sales and in lettings that are the absolute best across the performance and the customer service. So it's not some sort of smoke-filled room with a bunch of people sitting around deciding who's going to win this year. It's based on a proper assessment of the marketplace with every single branch and every single listing considered.
And you said that the Rightmove account manager can show the person the details of how the stats were worked out. And do you say they have access to the mystery shops?
Yes, after the EA Masters, we will be releasing all the information on the mystery shops.
That's quite brave thing.
So, well, what we can't do is we can't release anything which would identify an individual. So we're not going to share the time that the call was made or the day it was made, because that would, under a GDPR restriction, that would identify. No one's opted in for this.
Yes.
Okay. So, but what we will give is the scores in terms of saying to them, okay, you answer the phone, yes or no. Here's then what happened in terms of it. Because our goal is to help estate agents to fulfil their potential. That's our purpose, is to help people to fulfil their potential. And a big reason why we set this up, and a massive driver for Rightmove too, was to assist agents in raising the standards of the service that they deliver to the consumer. So we want to share this information with people so that they can see for themselves how they did. And have an opportunity to improve on it for next year.
How do you feel about the naysayers that basically deride what you're trying to do? I mean, let's be frank, you're running a business, and if someone wins, they're in the guide. They don't have to pay to be in the guide, but if they want to the stickers and the marketing behind it, they have to pay. How do you feel about those naysayers and doom mongers?
Yeah. Well, there's always going to be critics, and there's always, particularly those who hide behind fictitious pseudonyms and so on. And I don't mind engaging with anybody on a face-to-face basis or over the phone. And I've had many conversations. And some of the criticisms have been really helpful. We have evolved things over the 3 years.
So what's happened?
Thanks for the feedback. Well, the first year we got it wrong in terms of, we feel got it wrong in terms of the mystery shop was 50% of the score. Now it's only 20% of the score. We didn't include market share as a criteria. We do now. It's not as important a criteria to the consumer as it is to an agent who owns a business, but it is a factor, so we include it. We've taken on board a lot of other points. We've revised the whole mystery shop process to make it much. We used to have a question. The shoppers used to be asked, "How did the agent make you feel?" which we felt was too subjective with the numbers that we have. So we've eliminated anything that could be subjective. So we've taken on board a lot of these comments. And look, I've said on record, probably to you before, I'm not saying we've got it 100% right, and I accept that.
Okay.
But we will not stop striving for 100%. And my guess is that year one we've got it 80-something% right. I now believe we've got it 90-something% right, and we will continue to push for it. But look, you're going to get your critics. There are going to be those who say it's just a money-making exercise. There are, and I often reply to them. I go, so do you charge for your estate agency services? We're in business, right? And my business is about helping people to fulfil their potential. The big thing is, though, about my business is you don't have to subscribe to it. You don't have to become a member of the Property Academy. You don't have to buy a Best Estate Agent Guide license. You don't have to come to the EA Masters. It's your choice.
You should see the amount of people that were saying you have to buy a certain Rightmove subscription on a certain level and things like that.
Well, that's why we published the winners. You see, one of the things that, again, the critics said, "Oh, it's you only give awards to people who buy tickets." Well, actually, we announced the winners, not the shortlist. We've announced the winners before the tickets even went on sale, and that was as a direct response to agents saying to us, "Look, the surprise on the day is nice if you've won, but actually, if you brought your team." And you've come all the way to London and you've had a great day, it's expensive, you had a great day out there, and then you don't win.
But then they're going to turn around to you and say, well, you're only doing that so you can sell tickets to the...
You can't win, can you?
You can't win.
And so, luckily, we set out every year, and therefore we don't actually need to market in an aggressive manner. We know that people will come because we've been doing this for 20 years. It's only 3 years it's been the EA Masters. Prior to that, of course, it was the Estate Agency of the Year Awards. So, we've got a long record, if you like, of delivering, and we're told we deliver the best events. This year, again, we've sought to raise the bar in every single dimension, and the quality of the speakers and the workbooks that we're going to be providing and the insight that we're going to share, we think will be second to none. But of course, people will be the judge of that. Oh, and by the way, we will be live streaming it as well for free. So, if they don't want to buy a ticket to the event, they can watch it via the Rightmove Hub for free, right? So this whole sort of criticism, it amuses me. It used to frustrate me. Now it amuses me because every time someone comes in with a criticism, we've taken them all on board and dealt with it. Because yes, I am in business. Ultimately, if I don't have a profit, I can't sustain this activity. But my driver and purpose for setting up these awards in the first place was to redress the balance. The media has been so critical of estate agents for so many years, and it was in response to that I first set up the first awards to basically say, you know what, there are some really good estate agents out there, and they don't get recognised and they don't get acknowledged for what they do. And I set up the awards principally to redress that balance. And Chris, for the first 5 years, we lost money on it, a lot of money on the awards. I almost pulled it. I actually thought, you know what, I've had a go, but it was financially, it was a significant amount of money that we lost. But we persevered with it because we knew it was the right thing to do.
Do you think the Property Academy, potentially also Rightmove, could do more to publicise the awards? A lot of people are harking back to the old Sunday Times Awards and the fact that there was a nice name. Or is it the responsibility of the agents as well to almost do their part?
Yeah, I think it's a good question, Chris, and one that we continuously seek to try to answer from the perspective of what more can we do. Okay, so we provide a website, which is a consumer-facing website, for free. And every agent that's an award winner will be listed on that website for free. Now, if agents wish to, as we've already said, they can purchase a license, and that enables them to market their attainment. And ultimately, we don't see it as so much as a lead generator. Quite frankly, Rightmove does that, and other portals, that do that for them. And what this is, and what the feedback we've had from agents has been, the key thing about it is it's a differentiator. It's the ability to be able to answer a question, why should I use you rather than somebody else? And we're operating these days on quite fine margins in more senses than one. The decision-making process, consumers tell us that agents look the same, sound the same, act the same, they basically, it's quite hard to differentiate. And so many agents claim to be number one, claim to be the best in their area. Well, what we provide them, if they choose to, is a method of actually independently confirming this. They can say, look, we're not saying that we're number. It's not just us saying that we're number one in our location. Here's an independent assessment carried out by the Property Academy and Rightmove that confirms that we are number one in our location. Now, if an agent doesn't see the value in that, fine, don't buy the license. You don't need to. But if they do, and fortunately sufficient numbers do, to enable us to carry on and continue with the initiative. Because I'm not being funny, the cost of doing it,
20,000 phone calls is a lot of phone calls.
a lot of it, and the analysis as well of it as well, and you know, it's huge.
You've obviously seen the winners. What do good winners look like? You know, when they buy the license, what do good agents do with their license to actually get benefit from it? Because I've seen plenty of bad agents that have said, we've won this award, we're brilliant. And you think to yourself, God's sake, you've got a magic weapon there,
Yeah.
you're not using it. What do the good, don't mention names.
No, okay. So, I mean, first and foremost, I think that they create a highly effective marketing plan around it. They get themselves, they understand that this is campaignable. And so you have an initial burst, which is around the launch and the announcement. And you know, what would I do? What would I do? And what have I seen the best agents do? Number one, I'd contact every single one of my current and past clients and advise them of this in an appropriate way. Secondly, I'd make sure, of course, that all my team is fully briefed as well, and celebrate with the team. Hopefully, they'll celebrate at the EA Masters event. But if they choose not to come, right, they can still go and celebrate their attainment, and they should, because we have enough.
It's a good
right?
do.
Well, we should.
It's a shame I can't be going. But there you go.
We might be able to work something like that.
No, not unless you can speak with it. I'm on jury duty. I can't
Oh,
make
yes,
it.
you are. That's right. Yeah. So it's celebrating internally is really important. It's then about using the medals that we provide, and we've created new medals for this year, which I think are really.
They're much better.
So we've created medals which actually highlight the reasons why somebody's been awarded their medals, and so we've got separate ones of sales and lettings, and these are the individual branch assessments.
Okay. So to get those, are they the ones that are in the top 3%?
Yeah, this is the top 3% of agencies, which
So
is these ones. Top 3% of agencies are these ones, and these ones here are the individual branch assessments.
Okay, so tell me a bit more about these awards then.
Okay, so the in addition, what people can then do is use it. I think the most powerful time to use it is actually at the market appraisal stage, where they're able to go in and actually say to somebody, look, you know, most agents will claim that they're the best in the area, as I've already said. We can actually, we have independent confirmation of our attainment, and it's carried out by the.
Well, it's almost like the TripAdvisor, isn't it? That you're being given a certificate from someone else.
Absolutely, and look, you know, in this day and age, trust, we know from our consumer research, trusting an estate agent is a really important factor in their selection process. This is a further endorsement, and I'm afraid there are other endorsements which aren't so trustworthy. You know, we all know, the stories around some of the other, endorsement mechanisms that they're.
I think I could say online reviews and stars out of 5, but we won't mention any
Well,
names.
no, and some of them, and look, I'm sure they were set out with good intentions, but they can be manipulated,
Of course they can.
and it's those who choose to manipulate them that devalue them for those who are playing the game in the right way. These are independently assessed, and as I say, in terms of the size and scale of it, there's no other awards that gets close. The nearest award doesn't even get 10% of the branches in the country into the assessment. Nothing close to it. We get the entire Rightmove membership.
What if you're not on Rightmove?
You can still apply, and we have a number that do, and they enter the assessment as well. They have to provide the same information from their other portals that they use to confirm their position, which we take, and then we mystery shop them in exactly the same way. And there will be, as there was last year, there will be agencies that are both winners and also in the Best Estate Agent Guide that are not Rightmove members. But let's face it, the vast majority of agents are Rightmove members, and therefore we cover the vast majority of the country. There's always going to be the odd one or two in a location that don't conform, if you like, in that respect. But hey, it's that everybody can enter. That's the point. It's free.
And as you say, it's nothing to do with whether they're a Property Academy member or not, whether they're on Rightmove or not, whether whatever package they have. It is just cold hard data.
100%. And from a Property Academy perspective, I've had to have some pretty tough conversations with some of our members who haven't performed particularly well. Right?
How did they? Don't mention names, but were there any surprises?
Every year there are, and you know there are certain firms you sort of expect would automatically get in, and sometimes they don't. I mean, I remember one years and years ago, and I can mention them by name now because it's a number of years ago, and it's a mate of mine, Peter Rollings, when he was at Marsh and Parsons. And one year, Marsh and Parsons, it was on the awards. They did okay. I think they won silver that year. But you know, Pete always has the bar set at gold, you know, typical Peter style, and anything less than gold for him was unacceptable at that point. Anyway, long story short, we looked at it, and what we found when I said to him, "Look, your mystery shop didn't have a response." He said, "That's impossible. We have the systems and processes." And then he said, "Hang on a second. What date was it carried out on?" And in those days, we did share, because they had paid to enter, there'd been no GDPR and all that stuff. Anyway, he went, and he actually said to me, I remember him saying, our system had a fault on that particular day. And it was then I knew then that actually the system and methodology, you know, works. Now that's not to say that there aren't mistakes made, and you know, we have made some mistakes, and I'm sure this year's assessment will be the same. But you know, we have a pretty stringent process to try to eliminate them as far as we possibly can.
I mean, I see in all the Facebook groups people who don't get into the top 3% then almost dismiss it and say, well, sod the awards or this. What would you actually say to those people?
Well, you've got three options basically. You can take that view and just say, you know, it's fundamentally wrong. You can ignore it and just get on with your life. Or, as many agents do, you can use it to spur yourself onto better things and to ask the question, okay, what do I need to do? Now, if there's anything in our assessment that people think is inappropriate, right? So if someone says, well, actually, I don't agree with that, then I'm all ears to listen to it. But my sense is, having consulted with hundreds of agents on this, is that all the criteria that we measure are things that agents go, yeah, that makes sense. So it's business enhancing criteria. You know, did the property sell, yes or no?
That's pretty fundamental.
I think it is. But here's the rub. You see, some agents, for their own benefit, will leave properties as available, right, when they've been sold or let. It drives consumers mad, right? They really get upset by it. It's wasting their time. Some agents will argue, oh, we do this because we're looking to get a backup buyer in case the buyer falls through. And by the way, I could buy that if those same agents even ask for the person's details, right? So you know, there's an element here. You know, there are some agents who do it deliberately to boost their stock numbers and to attract more properties. I understand that, but it's not best practice from a consumer perspective, and of course it works against them on our assessment, because if their properties have been on the market for longer, because they've been on Rightmove as available for longer because the agent hasn't marked them up for sold or let, then that will have a negative impact on their performance.
The bosses, okay, so the vast majority of estate agents are one-man bands. Where do you think the biggest weaknesses are with those bosses of those agencies?
I suppose long term, it's their ability to actually separate themselves from the business. I mean, that's a whole different conversation probably, but from a business perspective, you know, their brand, their business is them as an individual, and how do they manage to scale it? Now, some choose not to. Some are very happy running a small business and being a local business person and running highly effectively, and that's their choice. That's fine. The problems start when they start to scale, and the business has been heavily dependent on them as an individual, and the people that they then recruit don't have the same incentive, aren't of the same stock as they are. And that's where it goes awry.
What do you think they could do differently to be better? I mean, if the results are pretty mediocre and they're not in the top 3, or they're just not the finger on the pulse, do you think they step up? They lack accountability to their business? Because you ask many valuers, the last time their boss went out with them on a valuation was years ago.
Yeah, absolutely extraordinary. I find this is one of the things which I've been banging on about. I mean, I think I may have mentioned to you before. Some years ago, I used to live in Wimbledon Village. I rented my house at the time to Roger Federer.
As you do.
As one does. And I didn't know it was going to be to him. I was contacted by a sports organisation would I rent my house out, and they made me an offer I couldn't refuse. Anyway, the point is, Federer won that year, and it was before he had kids, and so he was accompanied by his wife. But the other 3 bedrooms in the house, all 3 of them were occupied by coaches. And when I came back and I said to Fatima, who used to tidy up our house for us and stuff, and she was working for him during that period. I said, what was he like? She said, oh, he was lovely, really charming mouse. Okay, well, what did he do? She said he watched videos all day long. And I said, really? What sort of videos? She said, tennis videos. I said, well, she said, of himself. And he would go and have practice sessions, right, if he wasn't playing in a match. And then he would come back with his coaches to review the videos, the practice sessions. Now, this is the world's #1. You could argue the best tennis player of all time, certainly one of. Travelling with 3 coaches, right, all around the world at any point in time, living under the same roof with these people, and spending his entire time seeking to improve. Now, you don't have to necessarily take it to Federer level, but most agents are so far off the scale by comparison, where they don't review their key moments.
They don't coach or train
No,
themselves.
they don't. And you know, we're very lucky. We get to work with. We've got just shy of 100 members. We've got 98 members of the Property Academy,
Who are the best of the best.
some are. Most they all aspire to be, and we're working with them to make them. Some of them are exceptional firms and some exceptional individuals. And what I love working with those sorts of people is they wanting to raise the bar the whole time. Yeah, they just want to improve and improve and improve. And so, working with people like that, they do have processes. We put them in place. We help them to put them in place for continuous assessment and continuous measurement, to make sure that they've got a repeatable system which allows them to deliver a consistency of service. So the best agents just do, as I said earlier, they do the ordinary things extraordinarily well. Okay?
And you say the basis of that is damn good systems.
I think it is. I think, look, there's a people, of course, it's a people business, and people are really crucial to it. But the trouble with just relying on individuals, the sort of rock star of estate agents, as it were, is that they have off days, they have holidays, and they get busy. So
And people leave.
and all the above. So the key is, I think, is to have a systemised process. Look, #1 service provider in the world. You've never spoken to a single person ever at this organisation, and yet you and every single one of your viewers, every single one of them has transacted with this organisation, and it's called Amazon, right? And not one single person that has ever said to me, "Oh yes, I've dealt with somebody from Amazon." There's no individual to deal with. You can't call them,
They
right?
can't,
You can't. In fact, I don't know if they still have it, but they used to have. If your complaint wasn't resolved properly, their complaints department to handle the complaints that were rectified. The email address used to be, boy, am I hard to please @amazon.com. Now, I don't know if they still have that, but the point I'm making is that has got to be the ultimate business from the perspective of systems and processes and delivering a consistently brilliant service across the world.
Because a lot of people are worried that if you go too systemised, you become robotic.
Yeah,
How
yeah.
do you systemise something yet still retain the personal feel?
Well, I actually have written about this week in my coaching tip to our members, and the example I use is connected with the state agency, although they're not estate agents, and it's Moneypenny, the telephone answering service.
Wonderful people.
Well, there you are. Now, it's a wonderful service delivered by wonderful people, but I make the point that if you take let's just take 2 people connected in that company with property. So you've got Sam Jones and you've got Joe Tatum, all right? Now, they both deliver to the Moneypenny brands. The service is extraordinarily good.
You
But
can't
Sam
even
and Joe,
spot, you can't even, when you ring an agent, you can't even spot that they're not the agent.
well,
they're that good.
They are exceptionally good. But the point is, Sam and Joe, as individuals, have their own personality, and they layer their own personality on top, right, of the service. But what you don't get is a variation of the service levels, right? Those are consistent.
That's the foundation.
Absolutely. And then you can't. You know, I don't want some sort of one size fits all type of personality in a state agency. The diversity is one of the great things about it. Our clients are massively diverse in terms of all of their situations and backgrounds and experiences. So, but what is important is to have systems in place where things get done, and one of the key things that people, back to this liking and trustability, that's the word, likability and trust that consumers tell us is so important, is actually about delivery on your promises. If you're going to call someone, right, call them. If you're going to give them a report every week on the progress of their sale or their let, give them a report on it. And if you rely on individuals to do this, and you don't have standards, and you don't have service standards, then I'm afraid what you end up with all too often is a massive variation.
Yet the issue with estate agents, Peter, is because they're very people orientated, because they were valuers who kind of turned into managers, very people, not systems people. How can you teach that systemization and structure with what basically are just people?
Yeah. So I did a webinar recently, and I cited some research into what makes a great salesperson, and salesperson, no, not customer service person, salesperson. And there are 5 traits that have been identified, and I can point your viewers to the research if anyone's interested. But there are 5 things which are consistent. Number 1 of all of them is coachability. So it's the ability for an individual to actually be trained to deal with the different circumstances and how to react to different marketplaces and so on. The other 4 that they need to have in place. There's a strong body of evidence that shows that prior success determines future success. So you're looking for somebody who's actually got a track record and can demonstrate that they've outperformed their peer group. They need to be bright. Right. I mean, we're dealing with some quite complex issues, and we don't need to be off the charts PhD level, but we do need to employ people who are bright enough to be able to do that. You've got to have a fantastic work ethic. I mean, I've been in a estate agency. I entered this industry in 1979, and I don't think there's ever been a day.
You must have started as a child.
Well, and that's 40 years ago this year, Chris. Right, 40 years ago I entered this industry. And I've loved it, but I tell you what I've never found ever is a single day that's been easy, right? It's been proper hard graft and continuously so across the piece. So these are the factors which you can be. Oh, the 5th one is curiosity. So the salespeople demonstrate an interest and are curious. So what I said on this webinar recently was, well, if I asked you, Chris, are you coachable? You're going to turn around and say, well, yes, of course I am, Peter. That's a rubbish question. But if I turned around to you and I said to you, tell you what, Chris, pitch me, please, the Property Academy, right? And so you start, let's say you turn around and say, well, I'm sorry, I don't know enough about it, or I could do, but I haven't got myself together for that. Well, 1, you haven't been curious enough, and 2, your work ethic sucks, right? But that wouldn't be the case, I know, with you. So what it would be instead is you'd make a brilliant pitch. Now, halfway through, if I was interviewing you, I'd stop you and I'd go, that's great, Chris, thanks. What I'd like you to do is to rewind to the bit where you were talking about the value that the Property Academy gives members over their individual specific issues. So although we have the systems and the prescriptions, we also address individual issues on a monthly basis that people experience. I'd like you to amplify that, please. I'm testing to see if you're coachable, right? And so if you can then feed that back to me and in a way that's appropriate. 1, I've already established that you're curious because you found out about the business. 2, your work ethic is right because you've done your homework and put some graft in. 3, you're coachable. I now need to find out whether or not you've got any evidence of prior success. But good salespeople always have, league tables on their phones and copies of their stuff. So this is just a better set of questions. And as to your intelligence, I should be able to establish that in terms of our interaction. So what I'm suggesting is, therefore, what we've got to make sure is that we're recruiting the right type of people, absolutely. But then we've got to create for those people systems that enable them to deliver a brilliant service consistently well. And the great thing about having reliable systems is it gives you the confidence to put your magic on top of that. If though you're on the back foot the whole time because you haven't got a systemised approach and you're thinking, God, did that happen? It's called Fora. I do a newsletter every single Monday. I have done for over 5 years.
I look forward to seeing it.
Thank you. It goes out every single Monday at 7 o'clock in the morning. There was one exception, Tuesday on the bank holiday, right? It goes out 7 o'clock on a Tuesday morning. There's a system for it, right? I confess, I do not sit at my computer and press send on a Monday morning at 7 o'clock. It's systemised, it's automated. But the point being that I am reliant on that system to happen, and I trust the system because in 5 years it's never let me down. There's been one occasion where it did, so there was one where it went right, but we fixed it, right? So I'm prepared to accept that as a percentage. If I was reliant on different people, to implement that, I can guarantee you it would not have been delivered as consistently well as it has been.
Talking about staff, let's be honest, most negotiators and valuers are in their 20s and early 30s. So we bring up the subject of millennials. Do you have an opinion on how valuers, negotiators in their 20s and 30s that some people would classify as millennials, what's your opinion on the good and bad that they can bring to the industry?
Well, again, I'm probably going to upset some people here, but I think the problem is nothing to do with the millennial generation. The problem is to do with my generation. The people who are not prepared to adapt and to change and to understand the world has moved on. You know, it's incredible how fixed people's views are. Look, I think young people today are as enthusiastic and as positive about the work environment as they were in my year. It's just they've got a different set of drivers. My generation was more motivated by money.
Yeah, it's all salary, car and bonus.
Absolutely, it was very visual because we grew up in an era. You know, I entered the industry, very late, so early 80s basically, and that was what mattered.
It was your Vauxhall Nova GTE and your bit of metal.
Astra for me. Astra. Awful car. But
big wheels.
Oh God, it was desperate. It was a desperate thing. But the thing is that was the driver. Our status was
based on our cars,
cars, image, and so on. Right or wrong, that's just how it was. Today, I think the world has moved on, and people have got a lot less material in their outlook. The world's become a better place in many respects for that, and people are driven by more important things. And actually, the brand or the company they work for is really important to them in terms of it being the right sort of company, and also they're being appreciated for the work that they do. In our day, often it was a case of you tolerated appalling management because that was just the way it was. Younger people aren't prepared to tolerate it. They don't need to tolerate it any longer because they've got much more mobility. They're able to work across the country, across the world for that matter. So I think the problem lies more with the older generation than with the younger generation. Now that said, okay, ultimately it's down to a business to put in place and to create an environment where people want to give their best. My daughter she's 27, so she fits into that category. She's a lawyer with a very, very large law firm, currently the 6th largest law firm in the world, and it's on a trajectory to get to number 1. It's an incredible firm that she works for. Now, the competition for her to get into that firm was remarkable, really. And in the end, she had a 2-year, effectively, apprenticeship, where at the end of the 2 years, some of her colleagues, were dismissed. That they were let go. They did not pass the 2-year test. So their stringency around that examination, was incredible. What do? Basically, I'm saying we as a generalism, all too often in this industry, if somebody has the right sort of skill set or experience, they've got a job, right? And instead we should be interviewing for the right attitudes and behaviours, which I've already identified what those 5 are. Skills, nobody has ever been fired. Very, very few people have ever been fired for skills and experience. They're normally fired for attitudes and behaviours. And what we need to understand is that the right attitudes and behaviours are, first of all, they're identifiable. Secondly, they are very trainable. We can train people and help them and coach them to develop them further. But ultimately, we need to create an environment where people want to deliver their best work. They want to turn up and give themselves.
But how do you do that when basically, as a boss, you're presented with an entitled person who wants beanbags and free food? or again, is that the way they've been brought up? Medals for 8th places, and you can do anything, and you can ring up the headmaster and get it sorted. But in the real world, you can't.
There is an element of that, but I think it's exaggerated. I think in the real world, actually young people today have to be as competitive as my generation.
Do you think we were as perceived to be a pain in the backside?
Well, I've no doubt I was. I doubt you were. No doubt I still am by many people. But I think so. I mean, the old Mike Rutherford song, "Every generation blames the one before." And you look at that in the living years. If you look at that, that lyric and that statement, I think that's very true. And surely that's what life should be about. I mean, surely we should be evolving and getting better and improving. Now, along the way, yes, there are, the pendulum swings, and sometimes it swings too far. And I agree with you, 8th place, here's your medal, which is why Best Estate Agency Guide, getting back to that, nice little plug in there.
There you go,
right,
nice segue.
It's the top 3%. And when agents phone me up and go, I'm really good, I go, yeah, you might be really good, but are you in the top 3%? Because 97% don't win an award, 3% do win an award. So, somebody could be in the top 4%. That makes them a really good estate agent, but they're not going to win an award. The award is for the top 3. And I put that into context with one agent recently where I said, look, it was the Football League. You take the English and Welsh Football League, professional teams, okay, then basically last season, okay, there would only have been 3 winners, i.e. Man City, Liverpool, Chelsea, right? If it was the equivalent of no Spurs, no Arsenal, no Man U, no any other team, right? Just 3 out of the entire Football League. That's the equivalent scenario. So yes, some young people have been brought up in a less competitive school environment. They've been brought up, but I tell you what, competition to get into the best universities is fierce, right? Competition to get jobs in certain marketplaces, fierce. And then ultimately, they've got to prove themselves in those business environments. So I think that generally younger people I think they get a poor press. I think the problem is as much, if not more, with the older generation not adapting themselves.
Okay, so what advice would you give to Joe Smith, estate agent, who employs a couple of millennials who just doesn't get them?
I'd say, Joe, find somebody else to manage them, mate, or find a way of getting.
Is it a case of sitting down and just talking to them? Because let's be honest, those bricks don't talk, do we?
Yeah, I think there's fundamentally it's down to whether or not you wish to work with people who are different to you. Okay.
With different values.
Absolutely. So if you just want to work with the same, your equivalent, then employ people like that. But you won't have a long-term sustainable business because the world has moved on considerably. So the key is, I think, Stephen Covey always used to have this idea in the 7 Habits he wrote about, if you want to be liked, okay, the best way of going about that is to find something about the person that you can like. So rather than trying to be likable, instead find something about them that you can like. And do you know what? It doesn't matter who it is, maybe a few exceptions, but nearly always you can find something about somebody where you think, you know what, I really like that characteristic. And play to that as a starting point. And have it's about creating, I think, a meritocracy ultimately, that matters in a business. And then therefore that matters around what you measure. Now if it's just numbers, if it's just profit, if that's your only measurement, okay, you're going to create a culture that's very different to one that actually also has metrics around customer service. There's got to be profit. I'm not being wishy-washy around it. Profit, no purpose, okay? But profit on its own is just a score, right, really. It's the summary of everything else that you've done, okay? I want to see all those other metrics in terms of customer service, your performance in terms of delivery to your client base, and your employee engagement metrics as well. How engaged are your people? Are they encouraging their friends to apply for jobs? Do they turn around on their own Facebook page or Insta page or whatever and say, we've got a fantastic opportunity at work. I love it there. You'd love it too.
Because what makes me smile, especially letting agencies, they moan about their staff not attracting landlords, but they bonus the staff on move-ins. Well, if what gets bonus gets measured and gets done, doesn't it?
It does. It has a big influence on it, and of course, but also I think that the levels of remuneration in this industry. Again, I'm generalising, but I think they've fallen way below what they used to be, and too many people now are earning, I think, far too little.
Is that because? Do you think? I was at a conference of UK and Australian estate agents a few weeks ago in London, and it amazed me that in Australia, and I know you have a lot of dealings with Australia with Josh Fegan coming over, is people actually want to be an estate agent over there, and they almost take personal responsibility on their own training. there's the big ARIC conference, and it's $1,000, which is £600 in English money, and they pay for it out of their own pocket.
Yeah.
You ask a neg to pay for their own training, and they'll run a while. Why do you think people just fall into a state agency in the UK as opposed to want to be a state agent?
I think the problem stems from actually the fees issue. We don't charge enough money to pay enough money, right?
Okay, so that's a great. Let's talk about fees then. I mean, fees. You've tracked fees with your home buying survey.
Yep.
They've gone down, haven't they?
They have. My expectancy, and we actually are about to launch this year's home moving trend survey. And by the way, if any of your viewers would like to take part, again, it's for free. And if they take part and they get a sufficient number of results, i.e., a sufficient number of their clients respond, they get their data and they get a copy of this summary. So they can see how they compare against it. So not all for free, right? We do it to add to our intelligence, knowledge, whatever you want to call it. And what we've seen over the years is that the fees have basically been tracking down. And my expectancy for this year is we're going to see that the average will actually hit or go, you might even go slightly below 1%. It's been, for sales, it's been 1%. It was just fractionally above last year, but I'm talking about tiny fractions, plus VAT, okay? And by the way, we do not include the upfront models. So the purple bricks of this world are not included in that assessment. So you can't say that it's them that drag the averages down. Oh, well, not insofar as actual, they don't form part of this criteria. They may well have had an impact as to why agents and solutions.
That's what I want to come on to.
Yeah. So and the thing is, back to the people piece. If you're not charging enough money, right? You've got two main costs in the state agency. You've got marketing and you've got people, all right? And the people cost typically is far and away the biggest one of all, right? If you're not making the income, you can't pay it out in terms of, this is basic economics.
Okay.
And to my mind, every time we're reducing our fees, what we're effectively doing over a period of time is reducing the likelihood of our ability to attract the brightest talent. And therefore, higher fees is fundamentally linked to higher service in terms of the talent that we can attract. So, I feel that with this has been going on. It's not been an overnight thing, Chris. It's been a gradual erosion going down and down and down.
Why do you think that has been? You've been doing the survey for 10 years. Purple Bricks has only been on the block for 5-ish years, and it was dropping before.
Yep.
Why? What do you think? I have my opinion, but I'd like yours first.
Okay, so I think it's a combination of things, but principally, the number one reason is that I think agents have as their principal driver the winning of the instruction, and that's where, if you like, they get off on it. Did we win it? Yes or no? Winning the instruction.
And isn't it amazing how the loss of the listing is like you've torn your heart from you?
Yes, and the thing is, if I know a good business when I ask the question, what's your client look like, and what do they not look like? And a good estate agency can tell me both who their ideal clients are and the sort of people they will not work with. Okay, and the trouble is, too many will take on anybody. Right? It doesn't matter. We'll take on anybody. But you can't. Every business should have a sweet spot in terms of the clients they seek to attract. They should also have a "you're not coming in," right, a policy to people who are not appropriate. And quite frankly, I think that because of this driver of winning the business has been the key thing.
It's the only thing, isn't it?
Well, it is for some, and the consequence of that is that it also leads to overpricing in terms of to win the instruction, reduced fees. It creates a culture of almost desperation in some instances. It creates a short-termist approach. It causes marketing to all be focused on the here and now, as opposed to persuading people over a longer period of time. So I think it engenders some really bad habits.
Do you think we're looking for almost shortcuts and the short-term hits as opposed to delayed gratification?
Yeah, and here's the thing. I mean, Josh Vegan had this fantastic idea. He was over here a couple of weeks ago, and he came up with this lovely idea. He said, forget the annual anniversary. He said, what about make it an annual checkup? And I really like that idea in terms of actually calling somebody up. Chris, hi, it's Peter. It's time for your annual checkup. When's a good time in the next 2 weeks? and for me to come round. Now, if I come round and I've brought with me what I either know or can imagine would be your next move up in terms of your likely aspirational move, could I actually persuade a number of people, right, who weren't thinking of moving, right, to actually engage and think, wow, and how many people actually truly know what they can afford or what their property is worth and what they can move up to?
Not many at all.
And a third, we'll confirm this after the home moving trends, but historically, a third of all moves have been discretionary for lifestyle, not stage. So I think there's not nearly enough of that sort of initiative in terms of trying to help people to understand that they can move if they wish to.
So this is building a relation. What I find with the Australians is that they see you work with an agent for life, like a relationship sort of thing. I mean, I believe it was Spectre said only 12 or 13% of buyers go back to the estate agent that they saw. I mean, that's disgusting, isn't it?
It's not any surprise though. I mean, they effectively, again, another veganism. We send them to the estate agency orphanage. I mean, you know, we completely and utterly have nothing to do with them. We've taken their money. Thank you very much indeed. Wham bam, thank you, ma'am. Off we go. It's just wrong. And ultimately, they're missing a huge trick because so many of these people, their circumstances will change. They'll become landlords. You know, they'll want to buy investment properties. They might want to be helping their children get on that, and all the above. So I think we use the term, you know, becoming a trusted advisor, and it's how can an agent go from being transactional to a trusted advisor. And again, the very, very best ones, and there are a number of them, certainly at least 500 of them, who are exceptionally good at this stuff, deliver a brilliant service. But if I look at the majority,
yes,
right, the vast majority of agents ignore their clients once they've received the cheque.
Is that endemic of society wanting things now and not playing the long game? I think is that just an estate agent, the type of people attracted to estate agency play the short game and not the long game?
Look, I have more intimate relationships with my hairdresser, butcher, and dentist than I do with estate agents that I've actually transacted with, insofar as they keep in regular contact with me. Now, one or two of your viewers might say, well, that's because you have your hair cut more often than you move home, and you buy your meat from the butchers more often. I get that. But the point is, they've developed systems and processes. You know, my dentist has a system, it's an automated system that sends me a text every 6 months to remind me that my next checkup is due.
Yes.
And my hairdresser, every 4 weeks, sends me a thing to say, Peter, probably due for a haircut. When's a good time? Call me to make an appointment. These are simple things which we can do as estate agents to facilitate a much better and healthier ongoing relationship. Instead, we just are too transactional. I also think that we miss a massive trick in terms of, particularly those who've got great property management businesses. Right now, at home, I've got a to-do list in terms of my house. It's quite an old house. I've got a to-do list that's running to pages. I mean, I've got all sorts of issues with a boiler that's not working, I've got plumbing issues, I've got redecoration needed, I've got a fence that's fallen down. Just let's come to the top line, right? Who am I going to call for all these things? And the obvious person, surely, is the estate agent. Because a good estate agent will have contractors for all these things. And then if I've got that ongoing relationship, they can make money on it, by the way. They can set up a concierge service.
And who are you going to call when you do want to sell?
Exactly.
I mean, this is what the Aussies do.
Yeah, they do. And they do the best ones. I have to say, we hear about the best Aussies, okay? There's an awful lot of dross there as well. I'm telling you now, some of them are, but their best are very, very good, as our best are very, very good. But what we're commenting on, Chris, today is the industry as a whole. And the cream, the best, is in a very narrow band, right? When you get below a certain average point, it is awful. And by awful, I mean they don't answer the phones, they don't respond to inquiries, they take an age.
Is the cream in Australia bigger?
In certain locations, perhaps, yeah. Certain city locations, Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide, Brisbane, the main cities, yeah. But there's an awful lot of rural businesses, semi-rural businesses that are pretty poor. I think the big difference is that they attract a certain type of person and they remunerate those people extraordinarily well.
Well, let's move on to the self-employed model, the broker model. I've gone on record saying that I believe the high street versus online argument is not an argument. They've almost got to a 6-7% market share, and I don't think they'll get any further. But I'm of the opinion the next 10 years that probably 20-30% of people will go down this self-employed model, which again, not every agent in Australia is self-employed, but there's a hell of a lot more self-employed agents who work into the broker model. What's your opinion on the broker self-employed model?
Okay. So again, it's the business model. What we've seen with all the business models, and by the way, I think that dismissing the new models, the online, if you want to call it that, I actually call them the nationals now because they tend to be offering a national service. Okay, I think dismissing their business model is premature at this stage. And I say that because the first iteration may not have worked for a number of them, but that isn't to say that the second, third or fourth iteration won't. And there are some, I think, some signs, we've seen it, where new models can work. So the paid up front model might not have gained traction, but I look at businesses like UMove as an example, a part of the property franchise group, which if you like...
I tell you what, amazing. I just love their model.
Well, they've got a really good business model. Now, it doesn't work for everybody, and again, some of your viewers will probably say, we've got one in our town, and they don't do particularly well, fair dues, but there's a lot of them that do. So what's my view? My view is this. Whatever the business model, whether it's an ownership model, with employees, whether it's self-employed model, a franchise model, or combination of, whatever your business model is, you've got to be exceptionally good at it, right? It's not the business model per se, it's your application of the business model. Now, if I was setting up an estate agency again, which model would I personally select? It would be a franchise type model, insofar as I would have individuals who have got ownership of the business. Because if I wanted to scale it. Because the evidence suggests that actually, done well, those models can actually perform better than the average. However, again, there's a massive variation. You've got some franchisees who are awful, and you've got others who are brilliant. It's down to the selection process. Sometimes some of these franchisees are quite happy with earning, just about a livable wage. Others are seeking, they want to earn $1 million, 2 million, 3, whatever per branch in terms of gross income, and set their stall out to do it and achieve it. So I think it comes down to whether you've got an employer-employee model or whether you've got a self-employed model or a franchise model. It's about attracting the right people who've got the right attributes and the right behaviours. And in the same way we talked about the younger generation, I don't think we should dismiss the older generation either here. There's a lot of people who've got a lot of experience of life who I think could work exceptionally well in a franchise type estate agency business. And so, if I was starting up today, I'd be looking at all generations to attract into the business. But they would all have those 5 traits. They'd all be coachable. They'd all have a high level of intelligence. They'd be curious individuals. They'd have evidence of past success, and they'd have a fantastic work ethic. Those are the 5 things that I would be assessing them for. And it wouldn't matter, if they've got those 5, the business model should be able to fit in and accommodate, and they will flourish. If you've got the right business model, they will flourish.
It all comes down, therefore, to systems and attitude, really.
Yeah, my whole business coaching thing is based on people, systems, and brand. Okay, those are the 3 pillars, all right? So, and everything we do, it's one of the reasons why you'll see a lot of our models are triangles and things,
yes.
And it's because of those 3 points. You've got to get the people thing right, and I've got 10 key things which I look at for people, the 10 R's I call them. Then you've got to get the systems right, and the systems are both external and internal systems. And then fundamentally, you've got to have a proposition. So brand isn't just logo and identity and colours. You've got to have a proposition that is sufficiently compelling to cause a consumer to say, I'll buy that.
And when you say brand, there's discussions in the industry about the balance between personal brand and company brand.
Yeah.
What's your point of view on that?
Well, again, I think there's actually 4 brands. So when I work with, sorry, didn't mean to top trump you, but
no, I love this.
But I think there's 4 brands or 4 aspects to your brand that you always need to consider. So the consumer brand is one, okay, and that's a really, really clearly of importance. You've got to get your proposition right, it appeals to the consumer. Increasingly though, and I could argue more importantly, is your employer brand, or your attraction magnet brand if you're looking to attract franchisees, i.e. the sort of place you are to work at and so on. It's really important. The third one is the personal brand, or for some of us, leadership brand. So how are you as an individual, basically? And that, again, is something which needs to be
Is that
consciously
external or internal?
both. And the leadership brand is both, but very much 50-50 in terms of. And the fourth one is what I call the investor brand, in terms of being able to attract inward investment and ultimately an exit, because everybody is going to exit, even if it's in a box and be carried out. Every one of us is going to exit. So what's your investment? Now, of those four, right, ideally, every communication should appeal, but at the very least, every communication should have a checklist against the four. And when it comes to
And do you teach people this?
yeah, 100%. Yeah, we do. I mean, we that's our sort of third pillar, people systems brand. The third pillar is around those four things, and making sure that what you've got there for is something which is compelling. It's different. It's got a resonance with each of these different groups. The sort of place where basically people want to go and work there because it looks like, and it is a great place to work. Consumers love interacting with it, and an investor would turn around and go, "I'd stick money into that." I mean, it's not hard, right? Well, it's not. The theory is not hard. The practice is hard.
Are you happy to mention any names of people that you think are doing that well in the UK?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot, and the trouble is, if I start mentioning one or two, I'll probably, I'll get a kicking from several others in terms of why didn't you mention me? I think Ashton's in Hertfordshire, St Albans, is a fantastic business. Carl Judd, who's the owner of that business, is one of the best estate agency leaders I've ever worked with. So I'll just focus on Carl's business, and the reason I pick it is because it's it would appear to most agents as fitting into that traditional model,
yes.
Okay, as opposed to something a bit more contemporary, perhaps, or different. It fits a conventional model. And I've worked with Carl. Carl's been a member of our mastermind groups for probably 5 years now.
Yes.
He was a member of our summit group for 2 years, and I worked directly with him. So I have a bias about it, but that business really does deliver brilliantly well on these three things, and in a modest, understated, but an appropriate way. It's. I always remember a great sort of teacher of mine in the marketing world, Clive. Clive Cobb. He said to me once, "Peter, don't tell me you're funny, make me laugh." And a lot of estate agents are really busy at telling people how funny they are, metaphorically. Whereas I think what Ashton's and the very best estate agents do, metaphorically, is they make people laugh. They don't have to say that, that they're this, that. They just are. They just deliver. They just get on with it, and it becomes self-evident and palpable. And I think that what businesses like Ashton's, and there are plenty of others. There's lots and lots of others that I've worked with and work with now, do brilliantly well. I mean, there's a couple on at the EA Masters in October. We've got 3. I'm calling them the next generation. Nothing to do with Star Trek, but for 10, 20 years we've had all the, if you like, the legends, the Peter Rollings and the Dale Nortons and the David Newtons, and these incredible people come up onto our stage. We've gone for 3, what I was going to call them the young guns, but I was persuaded to call them the next generation. So you've got Mark Ross at Red Brick in Sheffield and Chesterfield. I mean, top bloke, top business, exceptionally good brand, and really pioneering some new things. Matt Nichol in Worcestershire. I mean, just one of the most driven individuals I've ever worked with. And Matt's team, it was a privilege to work with them a few weeks ago. Matt's team are just on it in every single level. He's about to open up his 3rd office. He's really charging. And then there's Chris Holroyd, who's based in Keighley and in Yorkshire. And Chris has got a really different approach to business. 40% of his income is generated through financial services, and he's really applying. I mean, Chris is just 30, right? So he's got 3 offices, I think it is now, and he's only 30 years of age. They're 3 extraordinary individuals as well who are delivering. The commonality of all of them is they're massive. They've got those 5 attributes. They're coachable, they're curious, they're intelligent, they've got evidence of past success. They all came out of bigger companies, having been successful, right? And they've got a phenomenal work ethic. And you get into their company, when you're with them, I come away from my interactions with them massively re-energised, and their appetite to learn. They all come on things like our Blue Sky events. They're members of ours. By the way, look, you don't have to be a member of the Property Academy to be a good estate agent. It just happens that an awful lot of our members are, right?
Yes.
And I've said to many agents, if we don't offer you what you want, please, 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 go and get it from somebody else, right? But whatever you do, do not stagnate, do not stand still. Always be learning. Constantly be looking to improve and to raise your game. Because if you don't, you will be overtaken very, very quickly. And what I'm seeing now is that those who get it are pushing themselves and pushing their teams to get ever higher. And one thing about the Best Estate Agent Guide this year, Chris, I can tell you now, the score to get in, the bar has definitely been raised. So branches that are rated as exceptional, excellent and highly rated, every single one of them, the scores this year are higher than they were last year.
So to get in the top 3% this year, you've had to have performed better than the top 3%.
100%, absolutely. And it's by quite a significant amount as well. The best are getting better. Right?
So there'll be a gap then, won't there?
There is a big gap.
Okay, let's we're running out of time with regard to the interview now. So what I'd like to do is just finish off and say, if whether you've won an award or not, anyone can come along to the EA Masters.
Yeah.
What can they expect when they're there?
Okay, so we've got 3 key components to it, and if people weren't award winners and wanted to come, we have a special ticket price just for the conference and for the innovation hall. So there's 3 elements. First one is the innovation hall. So that's all our suppliers. Okay, but it's more than that. We encourage all of them to bring something new and different for the day, and to give away content and materials which are really valuable for agents, and the vast majority of them get it, and they do it. And this year the workbook, Chris, that it's going to contain,
last year's was amazing.
Well, this year it's going to be it's in another class. My goal is for the workbook to be worth the entry price alone. That's my goal in terms of the quality of the support. You mentioned people like Spect, you've already just mentioned one. All of them will be contributing some superb quality content to it. So that's the first piece. The second part is the conference, the leadership conference. And our conferences have always been about business improvement and leadership. We don't get into compliance, we don't get into industry issues like regulatory issues, that others that do that. What we focus on is business improvement.
Is Josh coming this year?
Josh is coming over this year.
Can we have him on longer this year? He wasn't on long enough last year.
We do a TED.com style approach. Everyone gets 20 minutes, right? And the goal is to try to get them to condense it all in 20 minutes. But he
left Josh Bowman.
So no, to my mind, he's the best in the world at what he does. And I'm not just in Australia. I think he's the best in the world at what he does, and I enjoy our friendship as well. And we collaborate on our Blue Sky event every year. Which next year we're taking our team to New York for that. So really looking forward. Anyway, the third element is you've got the leadership conference, and the leadership conference is a mix of industry. I mentioned the next generation, people like Josh coming. We've got international agents as well coming across. We've got one of Josh's number 1 clients speaking to the audience. But we also go outside the industry. So we've got a chap who works with Professor Steve Peters, who wrote The Chimp Paradox.
Yes.
This individual coaches the England rugby team in terms of mindset and things. And then we go for others. So there's an adventurer, Natalia, who's just rowed across the Pacific. Right? She's just the most incredible. Her story is.
And again, people can see all this for free because you're going to be streaming it on.
Yeah, we'll stream it, and people can watch it. Obviously, being live is. It's a bit like a concert. You can watch it on the telly, or you can be there live. But we will make it available to people. We want to make it available. And the third element is the awards, and we will be presenting. We've got 2 celebrity presenters this year. We've got Gabby Logan again for the 3rd year, and Jonathan Davis, the BBC rugby pundit. And they will be. But what we're going to do this year with the awards is we're going to make it much more a celebration of the industry. And we're going to highlight the best things that actually go on in the industry. And we also want to entertain, and we've secured a man called Adam Kay, who wrote what for me has been the funniest book I've read in years, called This Is Going to Hurt. And it's his diary as a junior doctor. And he's doing a tour at the moment, which is getting rave reviews. And he's going to come along to provide some entertainment as well. So it's a real balance. Innovation hall, lots of new ideas, leadership conference, again to stimulate people to think, and then a celebration of success in terms of the awards. It's a crammed full day.
Peter, thank you very much for your time today. I hope everyone's got value from this. Peter's not paid me a penny to do this. It's just that I've known Peter for a number of years, and I know an awful lot of people love to hear what he's got to say, and I had the opportunity to talk to him, so I took the opportunity. So Peter, thank you for your time today.
Thanks, Chris.
You're a star. Thank you.
Really appreciate it. Thank you.